Welcome to the Good Shepherd and the Child podcast, where we explore the spirituality of the Christian child through the method of the catechesis of the Good Shepherd. I am your host, Carrie Mecki-Lozano, with my dear friend and co-host, Anna Hurdle. Today we have Carolyn Kohlhaas back on the podcast, and she dives in with us on how morality evolves and progresses in a child's life and how we can meet those needs in all the different levels in the atria. Carolyn is a nationally recognized formation leader for the catechesis of the Good Shepherd in all three levels of formation. She received her Bachelor's of Arts degree in theology and in religious education from Franciscan University of Steubenville. She also holds an AMI primary diploma and an elementary diploma. Carolyn has a Master's of Education degree from Loyola College, as well as a Master's of Arts in Theology from St. Paul's Seminary. She has been working with children in atria in the Archdiocese of St. Paul and Minneapolis since 2006, and with adults in formation courses throughout the United States since 2009. I hope you enjoy.
So Carolyn, welcome.
Thank you, Anna.
We're so excited to have Carolyn with us today. We're going to be discussing moral development. But before we begin that conversation, Carolyn, could you share with our listeners a little bit about how you first encountered catechesis of the Good Shepherd?
Absolutely. I actually came into the work having received my AMI primary Montessori training and also having an undergrad degree in theology and religious ed from Franciscan University. And really, I got into Montessori because I had had some transitions in my life, and the man I was meeting with for spiritual direction recommended that I take the Montessori training for my own spiritual healing, not as a career move, although the Lord knows what he's doing. And just through that brought me into this work, which has been such a gift in my life.
Wow.
Oh, wow. A spiritual director pointed you towards Montessori training for spiritual growth. That is amazing.
He was right. It was very well. The Lord works well. And he did in that case.
That's awesome. What a neat spiritual director you had.
I did. He was in my life just for that particular moment. And I've just told the Lord how grateful I am for him ever since. So just for about a year. And it really changed the course of my life.
That's awesome. Well, I am very grateful that your spiritual director.
That's what I was going to say as well, Carrie. We're all very grateful and thankful for that.
Me too.
Yeah. Well, whoever he is, praise God, bless you, this man now.
Absolutely. And once I, began in this work, I couldn't get enough. So, going through all the levels of my own formation, and then actually I went back and did my elementary Montessori training as well. And really, Anna, it was you who inspired me to do that when I had you as a level 3 formation leader. I just thought, you know the child of this age so well. I want to know the child of this age well. And so thank you for that inspiration, Anna.
Oh, you're welcome.
Anna is definitely an inspiration. That is for sure. Well, I'm excited about our conversation today, especially because we're really living into the season of Lent. And I would love to hear from you, Carolyn, about this moral development, this moral progression of the child and how we see it throughout our work in the atrium. But could you speak into kind of CGS and Montessori and how they view morality, moral development?
Yeah, absolutely. I, a couple of years ago, worked on my master's in theology at the seminary here in St. Paul, and I took a moral theology class there. And the professor asked us to define moral theology, like write a definition and then share it. And at the end, after everyone read theirs, he said, "Do you know that not one of you mentioned Jesus?" And I thought, well, I understand your point, but I had written, it's the sheep following the shepherd, the branches remaining on the vine, the light being protected and shared. by those who have received it. But the only reason that that's how I have this sort of approach to moral theology is because of what we've been given really from Dr. Montessori, but especially from Sophia and the work of CGS. So it was interesting to hear he was heading towards that direction with the whole group. But what a gift that I came in with a bit of that understanding. So when we look really at the Catechism of the Good Shepherd, we've been offered this truth that moral formation really often we hear it and we think right and wrong, right? This head knowledge about sort of how to act well. But one of the great gifts of this work is talking about kind of the threefold dimension of moral formation being the formation of the heart, like that falling deeply in love, so wanting to do well by the one that we love. Also the mind, like knowing, what are the boundaries, what is good, but also, and I think in a particular way, the formation of the body. So that ability to have the body follow through on what maybe we know is right, and also, in a context in which we do love those around us or the one who has given us this particular guideline or rule. And in looking at Montessori, I see this beautiful parallel in the sense of really looking at, from the youngest age, kind of that personal formation of character or growing in maybe that self-discipline, which is both the mind of knowing how we should live, but also the body of being able to follow through on it. And I think, too, the heart, not just sort of with the youngest child, it's not just the love for the adult maybe setting the rule or the others in the space, but also just for the environment itself and wanting to work with others to live well in that space. And really, I think those are the foundations that we've received from both Montessori, Sophia, and Jana regarding moral development.
I love the whole concept of thinking about it in regards to preparation of the heart, the mind, and the body. I agree that I think most of us, when we've thought about morality, moral formation, moral preparation, that we do think of more of an external and extrinsic motivation about moral formation, right? And what I see, what CGS and what Montessori has gifted me is from a very young age is when it starts, and it's intrinsic. It's that mastery of your body is part of it, right? Nobody thinks about that. Or that falling in love is a part of it. That preparation of the heart. And it's all from inside rather than external is what I see that CGS, Sophia, Montessori, what they gifted me in regards to looking at morality. I love that. I love it so much.
I think sometimes when we think about moral development, our mind naturally turns to the second plane child, because we know that is an intense period of moral development that is easily observable. But it doesn't begin there, does it, Carolyn?
No, I think you're absolutely right, Anna. I think on the adult level, we recognize some similarities with that second plane child.
Right.
But one of the gifts of, I think, both Montessori and CGS is the looking, but what's the foundation that allows that second plane child to be able to really enter well into that period of being attuned to a more conscious moral development? So I would agree. I think that first plane child, there's this beauty in that absorbent mind of kind of taking in like the modeling of how to live well, but also just like their concreteness at that age, really the learning more by doing than by hearing. So the hearing of the rules doesn't necessarily sink in, but the seeing of those rules being lived out, and then also the opportunity to also try to live that way. There's a quote from Dr. Montessori that says, "To build the house which morality will inhabit, some mastery of the body is necessary." And sometimes I wonder if we wait too long to try and do that when we're trying to, as a teenager say, well, you have to control your body. Yes,
right.
Maybe as a toddler, we should be working, towards that to lay the foundation for those bigger pieces later on.
Yes. I find that so fascinating, this idea that you could even say that moral formation in regards to like sexual education starts with the mastery of the body as toddlers. Like that alone is so fascinating, right? Like to expect a teenager to be able to do that has never mastered their body is a little ridiculous.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I had a friend recently say, I tell people, you don't parent your teens, you parent your toddlers. And then when they're teens, they live well. Isn't that a beautiful phrase?
Yes,
she just
I
told
love
that
that
to me this weekend. Yeah.
Yes, which tells me like how important this toddler work is that we're doing. Like, yeah, it starts younger, go younger. Like Sophia said, yes, go younger. I love that.
Absolutely. I think too, with that first plane child, we can't like change the internal, like there's this kind of child-owned capacity within, but we can do so much on the external. So I think that's where it's so important at this age to really focus on the prepared environment and like be able to set up a space in which this development can begin to happen. And gosh, there are so many aspects of the prepared environment that I think actually have a really big impact on this particular aspect of the child. So even just like that sense of order, a place for everything in its place, returning things to where they go, having only one of each material. So having to wait for someone else who is using it, right? Having a control of error within the material. So being able to kind of check themselves, which I think leads more to that self-discipline and not having someone else have to come in and kind of check with that. And just that absorbent mind, but sensorial body working towards that concentration through the work of the hand, almost like that self-mastery that I don't know that we associate with like moral development. And yet that's that aspect of the body.
Right.
And there are so many parts of what we offer in the atrium that really help with that practical life, grace and courtesy, right? How to walk around a mat, those types of things. Having older children who are models for behavior. Also just that aspect of waiting for what is good. Like I have a kindergartner right now. I'm assisting in an atrium session, and he has several times there's a adult chair near the city of Jerusalem, come over and said something like, if I knew this material, I would work with it every day. And one day you will know it. I can't wait to see the work you will do then. Like just that waiting for what is good at this age is so good for them.
Right.
Yeah, that mastery of self, or that like mastery of the body is what's happening. Like I have to wait in order to touch this beautiful thing.
Or dropping a pitcher of water by accident, but seeing that the water spilled, that you spilled the water, or possibly even that the pitcher broke. That real life experience that happens when something like that occurs. Another such an important grounding. My actions, we're not putting a judgment behind it at all. There's no value judgment, but that my actions have consequences.
Right.
And that I can learn to take care of that consequence, right? Like this is how we clean up a spill. And there's such a beauty in both the learning to be more careful, but also the coming back and restoring, perhaps with help. And often it's the other children who want to come in and help them, which is just really lovely to see.
Right.
Yeah, who would have thought that spilling water at 3 years old could be a form of moral formation for later in life, right? So it goes back to that, let them fall, let them spill, let them get dirty, let them break things, but that's not the end. There's a complete cycle that needs to happen, right? But then also provide the towels, provide the mop, allow them to pick up the beans even if it takes 20 minutes. Like that's important in order for that moral formation to really have its full, roots happening inside of them.
I think too, just having, like, I am often very intentional about how am I walking? How am I carrying something? How am I, as well as those older children in the space who really provide that modeling of behavior. The youngest, those 3-year-olds, I mean, they sort of watch me, but they watch those 5 or 6-year-olds with like hawk eyes. So like just helping them to know that you are, being a witness, like being an example. Thank you for your leadership, because it really has such an impact on those little ones.
Yeah, I love that. With the multiple age, it's so important to have those models of behavior. What about within our CGS works? Where do you see those truths being proclaimed?
Yeah, I really delighted in kind of thinking through what in level 1 really offers a kind of a foundation for the moral life. And I was thinking how often we proclaim the truth that the light is stronger than the darkness. Mm-hmm. And I mean, such a concrete kind of imagery, but we know as adults, like, there are so many times in our life where it's not concrete, where we need to hear this truth. And it's kind of laying that foundation. God has won, like this sense of like, yes, it's dark, and yet the light is stronger. And for that to be really deep within, I think lays a foundation for handling some of the things that come at us later in life. Also, just that Jesus died and he is risen. Like, you hear that, the strength of good, the strength of life being stronger than death, right? And I think those pieces, those truths really help lay a foundation for the moral life. I was also thinking about how just that focus on the small with the child of this age, like the tiny mustard seed, the yeast mixed with the flour, that does such great work within the leaven work. So how something very small can do something very great. The children will sometimes say, I didn't see Father do an epiclesis at Mass. And someone once said to me, yeah, but he does really, God can do really great things with something very small. And so sometimes I've offered that to the child too. Like, you listen for that moment, watch for that moment, but just know it might look small. But what do you think God could do with something very small? So just, I think for that too, laying a foundation for the future. And then I don't know, the last one I had thought of, I look forward to hearing either of you, your thoughts as well, was this focus within the liturgy with these little ones on the epiclesis, like that coming of the gift, and then the offering, like our response to the gift through, within, in Christ. So this idea of God who gives and we who respond in praise, in thanks, in giving what he's already given, right? Just that kind of mutual exchange in a beautiful way, but also then how we extend that to one another in a particular way through the sign of peace, which kind of brings us to like bridging into that second plane child. But I'd love to hear any other thoughts from either of you.
My thoughts are with the, I'm still thinking through this as I'm speaking, so forgive me, but that enjoyment that we see, that enjoyment of this gift, and then the offering back up, and then the sharing of the gift, but that we truly do see an enjoyment. And again, that is also that very most fundamental response of prayer as well.
I love it. I'm thinking of a line from Sophia where she talks about, if we don't enjoy God, like we've lost something really essential in our religious life. And so I think that's so beautiful. I remember a friend saying, and I've noticed it now too, often the youngest child, their expression of joy is like this deep sigh of like contentment, which is just so beautiful to see.
I love that. I for one feel a little called out by what you said in regards to, the small and the epiclesis being small, and God can do great things with small. I will no longer judge priests' small epiclesis. so thank you for calling me out on that.
I was once told that in the Tridentine rite, the elbows needed to be against the body. So like, be careful, calling one out, a priest out for it, because there may be, that tradition that they are holding to. So I just felt like, what a beautiful other way, to help children.
I love it, though. I love it. Yeah. Yes, that God can do. We say that. Why can't that be applied to epiclesis? God can do great things with that epiclesis that barely moves, right? Like, yes.
I started to tell them, like, oh, but you know it's coming, so look closely. Like it's sort of like this little secret moment that you're looking for, but you already know about it. So
Oh, I love it. Definitely presenting a beautiful gift to them the way you're saying it like that. I love it.
I also, in thinking about these truths that are being proclaimed, this is not a theoretical idea. We, over and over, for many, many years now, all over the world, we have seen children respond to these themes.
Yes. Yes. And these 4 that you just lifted up are almost the ones that they gravitate towards the most in level 1. Right? The light is stronger than the darkness. I sing that. My children in my level 1 atrium asked to sing that every week, all year long. They love, that's their favorite atrium song.
As soon as they hear that prophecy of the light, it's like seared into their memory for all time. It's so beautiful.
I love it. And to think about that as a form of a seed being planted for moral development, it just takes it to a whole nother level of love for that prophecy. Yeah.
To be honest, that's a proclamation I feel like I have given to friends and to, like just this sense of like, but don't forget the light is stronger, right? Life is stronger than death. The light is stronger than darkness. God has promised and he does what he says. Like we need to hear that again. So if we can help plant that seed so deeply in these little ones, I just hope that, lives with them for forever.
Yes. In my mothering as well, I feel like that phrase, the light is stronger than the darkness. Don't worry. The light is stronger than the darkness. Like that's just one of those tools that I have in the tool bag that gets pulled out a lot. Right. And I think that is a very, very powerful. I love that. So what about in level 1, you have those kids that are looking like they're budding into being a second plane child. But then in level 2, when they get to level 2, they kind of look like they have a lot of level 1 characteristics. They have a kind of a unique place where they are in their moral progression. What would you say about those transitioning children?
Yeah, I think it's so good if you're in level 1 to have a sense of the level 2 child. And if you're in level 2 to have a good grounding in the level 1 child, because you're going to have children on both sides of that. And there really is this kind of movement, I don't know, for me between that last year of level 1 and first year of level 2, as they're kind of moving. And it doesn't feel like they're fully one or the other for a while. Like there's a bit of movement. But it's this, there's still kind of that absorbent mind happening, but they're also moving into that reasoning mind. And they're starting to ask really big questions. There's a longer quote from Dr. Montessori, but she talks about how like somewhere around the age of 7, I think this is like between 5 and 7, you start to see them becoming oriented more towards moral questions, towards, acts of judgment, starting to see like, okay, so I know the rule, but you're not following the rule and you're not following the rule. And what are you going to do about it? Like, how does this work in the world? And what Montessori says is the great problem of good and evil now confronts him. Like this new kind of reality. And she goes on, she says, this preoccupation belongs to a very special interior sensitivity, the conscience. So we're starting to see them moving more into big questions and also like almost an interior kind of wrestling with. So I can like objectively say, this is right, this is wrong, and you're not following the rules. But it's almost like 2 to 3 years later before they begin to say, oh, and maybe I'm not following the rule either. I don't know if that fits what you have, encountered as well.
I love that you're highlighting that because I can see in the parable how that character is wrong. That external, I can see the morality there. But that development of seeing myself as that person in the parable that's done wrong, the fact that you're pointing that out, that does not come until later. And would I be right in saying that like closer to level 3 later?
Mm-hmm. That's my experience.
Yeah. Like I think that's so helpful to point out because, as parents, as catechists, we might say, well, you hit them, you don't want to be hit, right? So why would you hit them? That understanding of being able to apply myself to the situation doesn't come until later. I can see externally, yes, it's wrong that Bob hit Joe, but me, Sam, hitting Joe, I haven't gotten that far yet.
So that reminds me of something that we've all dealt with from time to time probably, and that is of tattling. And oftentimes the adult thinks that the child that is telling on someone, we think they're wanting us to do something about it, to do something to the other child, to correct the other child, so forth. And sometimes the child is just asking, what is the rule? Mm-hmm. What is the rule here? Like Carolyn said, they know the rule, but how does it apply here? Do we say this word here? Is it allowed or not? Mm-hmm. So oftentimes that is really what they are looking to the adult for, is guidance.
Yeah.
They're more aware of that. That's part of that new capacity of social awareness. Like they're watching others in a different way and saying, wait, but I thought, and that's the reasoning mind. Oh, but I thought this was the rule, but they're not following the rule. Is it really the rule? The example I'll often give in level 2 training is, in our family, we don't wear jeans to mass, but we're camping, so we're going to mass wearing jeans. But I thought that was the rule. And my grandma says that's a rule, but my uncle says that's not a rule. But my friends' moms, they're all of the, it's like their world has expanded so much that they're trying to figure out, but I thought you said, and how does that fit? Montessori says, this is the age of the child saying, help me to think for myself. Like, tell me not just the rule, but like, why are you thinking and applying it? Because I want to be able to apply it well. And so I think what Anna is saying is so true. They'll come to you and say, but they're not following the rule. And they're making you aware they see this, but also like, so is this really a rule or not a rule? And sometimes all it takes is just affirming, I'm glad you know how we live in this space. And it's not that they even go back to that child. They're just trying to figure out for themselves. I thought you said, but now it's not happening. I don't know. I feel like that's my whole life. like
Yes. Yes.
I thought I told myself and it's not happening,
Mm-hmm. 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 Yeah, I'm feeling the exhaustion already just listening of the story, but wait, but it's not happening and that's the rule, and it's like, yes, but this is an interesting situation. Like, how do I explain to the second plane child all the little details? But I like that you're saying that you don't necessarily have to do that you can just say, you're right. I'm glad that you understand how we live into this space. That's nice.
And the challenge with this age is that it's not just sort of, we walk around a mat, we put trays back on the shelf. Like there's this, Dr. Montessori says at this age, up to this point, it was important not to bump into someone in passing. Now it's important not to offend them. Like we're moving from that more physical environment or like action of grace and courtesy to now this. So that's the rule. They're not following the rule. Going up to them and saying, you're not following the rule is probably not going to make this better, right? Like it's a different kind of grace and courtesy. So you've recognized this truth, but what do you do with that, right? And I often feel like we as adults, we need this. Right. So much so. Yep.
Yep.
But this is a big work of this age of child of kind of needing to stand back and like exercise that moral reasoning in the thinking through, what do I do in this case? Or this is why we often talk about when I was in the Montessori environment as an E2 guide, so the 4th through 6th graders for several years, we would have class meetings. And sometimes I would just say, guys, we've got a problem and I need your help. Like, here's what I'm noticing. Here's what we had agreed to. Are you noticing this too? What will we do? And often the children would then bring up something, in a similar way. We have a problem. Here's what I'm noticing. I thought we agreed to this. How will we solve this? And so that almost that exercising of the reasoning mind to say, here are some ideas. What will we agree to? So not just being told, but being a part of the coming to a solution. And honestly, some of their solutions are not what I would come to. Right. And yet when they're a part of it, they really do want to then carry it out.
Yeah. And just in introducing this idea that we're looking for solutions, not blame.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah. Yes. That's a very positive discipline thing to say. Mm-hmm. Yes. We're looking for solutions, not blame.
I love it. Yeah. I do think, though, at this age, the prepared environment is also still a factor, right? We talked about for the level 1 child, that prepared environment was a factor. I think at this age, too, we see it, but maybe a little bit different way. They're these more abstract ideas, like this helping to kind of set guidelines together, right? Or handling problems as a community and kind of talking through, because it's not just sort of, I didn't walk around a mat, but like, how do we together live well in this space? And they can all kind of contribute to that. One of the interesting things that I've found over the years is when you have children coming into a level 2 environment and their relationship with God has not had the chance to really develop within a level 1 or within the home, and they're first encountering God, they see him as this judge or this rule giver. He set the rule, we follow the rule. And that's actually how they see him at this age, if that's kind of their first encounter. Good, I wanted to know the rule. So now I know the rule. But it's interesting, the children who didn't have kind of that level 1 prior foundational relationship with the Lord, be it in the level 1 atrium or within the family or in other places.
Right.
While they're fine with God as judge at 6, they're not so fine at maybe 15 if that was their first exposure or view of God. So like they want to know the rules at this age, but when that's the first time they encounter God, I just have seen they see him almost in a judgmental way later on in life, which I just find interesting.
And they see religion as a list of rules.
Even though that was fine for them at 6 or 7.
Right, because they wanted to know the rule.
Exactly.
So you're saying, am I understanding you correctly, that you're talking about the child whose first real introduction to who God is starts in the second plane later in that child's life when they're 15 to continue to see God, not the 15-year-old who their first exposure is. You're talking about the second plane child as they grow. That's interesting. We'd have to have a whole separate conversation of what to do about that child. No, because that is incredibly fascinating. Like to help a child whose first strong encounter with God, how to help them then maybe go back to the God of love that the first plane child absorbs so fast. And then also the third plane, parallel plane child, young adult, teenager, help them to go back to that root of God. God is love. Interesting.
What I've seen is this is the great wisdom that Sophia and Jana have offered us in terms of we want those level 1 children to have time in the atrium or in a place, right? When you talk about the religious potential of the child, really it's that level 1, the 0 to 6-year-old who has that just absorbent love relationship capacity. And it's not that the older child, the 6 to 12-year-old, they're just in a different plane. And it's not bad for them to see God as judge at this age. But without that foundation before it, we see maybe some issues later on in their life.
That's a really fascinating thought. And I wonder if the answer to that is the spiral method, right? Like, so we hit back these same themes of the Good Shepherd, the true vine, those kind of things, again, even in the third plane, to help them to root themselves back into that. God is love also, not just God is judge. Interesting.
And that's part of the gift even into level 2, that we still speak about the Good Shepherd, the beauty of the kingdom, right? The gift of the white garment, like so many of those things. It's just no matter what, they're at a new plane of development. So trying to walk that line between offering them always, continually, these great truths of who he is as love, as in relationship, right? But also honoring, they also need the rules at this age. They want them. This fits who they are in this plane of development. And really speaking about rules, that kind of brings to the next piece in which this environment, Montessori speaks about this as like cosmic education, like this idea of seeing the big picture of the universe, or for us, even kind of that big picture of salvation history, and how within salvation history, within the universe, there are certain laws that exist. And it's not like, the sun said, shall I shine all the time? Like this is like written within their creation are these laws that may not be laws they choose, and yet the following of them gives order to the entire universe. And so again, kind of that abstract law and how beautiful that can be when you see everything working in right order, long before we start to that more maybe subjective, do I follow those laws and also help contribute to order, but seeing the beauty of it kind of on the broader objective scale, which we hope will lead to that more subjective piece. I think too, just the wonder at that, right? The young child has such an ability to be in wonder and awe, but this older child too, especially when they see like that big picture and things working together, or the variety of plants or the variety of animals, the way other people have worked well using, their hands and their intelligence to help love one another. So kind of seeing that objective again before kind of moving into their own piece of like, I often don't see until level 3 the children starting to say like, where do I fit within all of this? What have I been given that's not just for me, but is to be shared?
And I think sometimes there is a little bit of a danger in trying to rush that.
Absolutely.
But also how important that contemplation of his own cosmic task is. So for a child to continue in their spiritual growth through level 3 so that they can get to that question, because God, I see so much moral development happening just in that one question. What is my cosmic task? What has God given only me that I have a particular role to play in the history of the kingdom of God that I need to give to everyone, to God, to the kingdom, right? Like that's a huge, important question that puts my belonging in this big picture on display.
And I think this goes back to what we were saying earlier about that more objective, this is the rule, you're not following it, you're not following it, you're not following it. I can't yet see myself.
Yeah.
I think too, in level 2, this is the, wow, everything that God has created works together or is intended to in this beautiful unity and harmony. And then later on saying, oh, and how am I part of that as well? Like, which is how do we not rush them, but also help guide them when they're ready to that next layer of these different aspects of morality?
That's a big question.
So good. I just had one more thing related to the environment, and it was just thinking about like the big work done at this age. So the younger ones that, very much the working on their own, maybe beginning to maybe a little more kind of parallel play almost, but at this bigger age, the need to work together on big projects. I had a child who wanted to work with a friend to make a copy of the blue strip, the sort of salvation history timeline. And I said, well, you are welcome to work together. I wonder if you'd want to have a conversation about what you will do with this work at the end, like if one would take it home or how you will handle that. And they looked at each other and they said, we'll do our own. But like, so just even those pieces of how do I work through a project together, and also how do I then wrap it up maybe? And just from that, big picture of looking at it, said, we'll do our own, we'll just do them right next to each other. So those bigger works, communal work, collaborative work.
In the level 2 and the level 3 atrium, you see very, like how we talked about how in level 1, we talk about the light is stronger than the darkness, that, the God lives within the small, that focus of the small, Jesus died and risen, those truths that help also develop moral formation. Where do you see, where is that? Where are those truths in the level 2 and the level 3 atrium that we proclaim that help with that moral development?
I think it's all the same ones. You talked about the spiral method earlier, and I think all of those come up again. But also this idea of salvation history, that we read in the Bible God's work with his people, and we live in liturgy, really all of history. We live redemption, we live creation, we live a taste of parousia in the liturgy. And so in some ways, seeing that big picture, and especially developing a desire for the moment yet to come, the moment when God will be all in all, that longing for the kingdom in its fullness in parousia, I think really begins to also develop like I want to work in that way. I want to help even today someone to have a taste of parousia. How could I be a part of that even right now? And that really brings like an awareness of what we call in this work, the blank page, like tonight and tomorrow and the next day, while we're helping to sort of bring the light of redemption into today, and we wait for parousia, there's this time in between that has not yet been written. And so I love that for especially the new level 2 children hearing about this, they hear the blank page with, this is amazing. I get to write. This is so great. Because as an adult, I hear it as, oh, shoot. Right. And I think the level 3 child gets more into that of like, oh, no, I have to write well. Oh, no, but the level 2 child sees it as such a gift. Well, yeah, I want to shine his light. I want to share a taste of parousia with someone else. I want to live well in the kingdom. And they see even what we might consider like more formal, moral, kind of conversation as this beautiful gift of getting to collaborate with God. And they also see others who in our history have collaborated well, right? Mary who says yes, the apostles who leave all to follow, Jesus who gives all of himself, right? Like they see these models and say, yeah, me too, I can do that, which I just think is so beautiful at that age.
There is work to be done.
And they're totally willing to. I think as we get older, it gets harder.
They're excited to be included in it at that age.
They are. And they have great hope in their abilities, which I love. I love that enthusiasm. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
And so to help guide them, we also offer those moral parables and the maxims, the moral parables where we can say, well, who lived well in this? And what could we then hear? But being careful not to push too much to the what could we hear until they're really ready for that. Right. So if the Samaritan is the one who does what is right in the Good Samaritan parable, I wonder if we might also be a part of this parable, who we might be like in this. But if they don't kind of bite on that in level 2, allowing them to just enjoy it as it is, because by level 3, that's exactly where they go, is who am I in this, in a particular situation? How could I have lived better or been more like the one who lived well in this parable? And the maxims really help with that as well. Like even just, I talk with my children about the maxims, these short sayings, often from the Sermon on the Mount that give, how to live well. Love your enemies. Say yes when you mean yes and no when you mean no. Your body is a temple of the Holy Spirit. I often work with the 1st and 2nd graders on just writing these on our hearts and minds so that then we can remember them and then we hope with his help live them well. And I love, again, level 2 children who say, be perfect just as your heavenly Father is perfect. Sure, I can do that. That's not typically our response. I had a child say, well, yeah, I just have to be me. He made me. I just have to be me. And they trust that if God has said this, then he will help us. I just love, Sophia talks about how Christian morality is a morality of you can, because he helps us to do it. And I just see it in the level 2 child so clearly and have to remind the level 3 child, and he will help us.
I think another place where we see the stark difference in how these parables are perceived when we are giving formation courses to adults. And we are meditating on a parable like the wedding banquet or the bridesmaids, and the adults really struggle with these parables, whereas the child sees the fairness, sees the justice, and it's like, yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
I just presented the 10 bridesmaids to adults this weekend in a training course, and that's exactly it. Like wrestling, just really wrestling. And I think we should wrestle with that.
Exactly.
But the level 2 child is very much like, well, that was the rule. They didn't follow the rule. They didn't have light. They can't go in.
Right. And adults are going, I can't believe we're giving this to children. Yeah. It's like, yes, we are.
And I love, with that one in particular, I love that we will come back to it in level 3 and look at it again.
Right.
And they will hear it in another way. And I love that we can offer them those layers and walk with them through both.
Right.
It also really shows us how the children are examples to us on deep spirituality, right? Like they are not, their reception of a parable like that is a model to us on how to receive it in some ways.
Yeah, amen. I just had one more thought on CGS truths in this particular area, this level leading to kind of this moral. development. And I think back to the liturgy. So we talked about kind of gift response, epiclesis offering, sign of peace, like this sharing of the gift. And absolutely, that is still present at this age. Really, this is the centerpiece of level 2. There's nothing in level 2 that I wouldn't want to give children before their reception of their first communion. Really, all of it is aimed in preparing them for that. And that's the centerpiece, the one Jesus who gives all of himself to us. And then through him, we give all of ourselves to the Lord. And we become absolutely beautiful when offered through, with, and in him, like because he can do that, right? That's Sophia speaks of this as like cosmic breathing, where we receive all from God and then offer all to him. But I think at this age too, we are also often preparing children for reconciliation in a way of like, God is so good and he's given so much. And I see that maybe I don't always respond fully. I don't always care well for these gifts. And so I come to him and say, help. I love the parable of the Pharisee and the tax collector, how the tax collector goes home justified. Why? Because he asked for mercy. Like he asked. And so the gift of reconciliation, that we can come and ask for help and go home able to live well again in a whole new way. So I just love that we can offer them that gift as they're becoming aware of, maybe y'all don't always live well, but now maybe I don't always live well. And I have somewhere to go to be able to receive from the Lord a fullness of light and life again, so that he can help me as I go out.
Yeah, that's powerful. And that cosmic breathing, that gift and response. God, you see it so fully in the second plane child, where the first plane child lives in the receiving of a gift. They are so content just to live in that joy of receiving of the gift. As you move into the second plane child, they are ready to respond to it, right? So that cosmic breathing that you're talking about of gift and response, it's like the second plane child lives it out in their everyday life, right?
I love how it's oriented me to that too. Like, yes. It's not just at Mass. It's like every moment, like, Lord, how do I live well in this moment? How do I enjoy this beautiful sunrise? How do I praise God for the bitter cold? like how do I, take these gifts he's giving and not just use them well, but just thank him. That's the level 1 child. But then the level 2, how to use these gifts well.
Yes. I love it. Well, Carolyn, is there anything else that you would like to share with us before we finish today?
Oh, there's so much more.
Well, how about, is there anything that you want to point people to? Because this is such a beautiful topic. And I feel like we've just barely skimmed the surface. So what is something that you could point people to if they want to kind of dive into it deeper?
I mean, if we're looking for where could we go to hear more, I think there's a lot within the religious potential of the child, book 2. I mean, recently we, looking at just that chapter 1 of remembering who the level 1 child is as we're moving into level 2. But I think also several of the chapters that really focus in, you might know better which ones they are, but really focus in on this moral development piece would be a really good place to go.
Yeah, I agree. That is a great resource. Well, thank you, Carolyn. This has been just wonderful. I really appreciate you.
It's been a gift to chat with you both. Thank you for that gift.
And it does seem like we're all just sitting around talking, doesn't it?
It's always fun to sit with friends. We should get some coffee and do it more often.
I wish.
That's right.
Thank you, Carolyn.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all for listening to this week's episode of the Good Shepherd and the Child podcast. In our show notes, you will find a few of the quotes that Carolyn shared with us from Maria Montessori's Spontaneous Activity and Education, as well as a few from Sophia Cavalletti in the book, The Religious Potential of the Child for the 6 to 12-year-old. I also put links in our show notes if you would like to purchase the books that go along with the second plane child, which is our underlining theme of season 6. So the biggest one that you would want to get your hands on is that book that Carolyn quoted, The Religious Potential of the Child for the 6 to 12-year-old. If you want to hear more from Carolyn, I also put links in our show notes for the 2 past episodes. That was episode 34 on the Paschal Mystery and episode 55 on cosmic education. I also really would love to point you to our social media pages. The United States Association of the Catechesis of the Good Shepherd is on Facebook and Instagram. You can find us at CGS USA. So go check us out there. This podcast is sponsored by the United States Association of the Catechesis of the Good Shepherd. If you would like to know more about the Catechesis of the Good Shepherd, or if you would like to become a member, please go to cgsusa.org. Thank you all for listening. We will see you in 2 weeks. Go and fall more deeply in love with God.